Okay, let's talk to Martin North, who is the principal of Digital Finance Analytics, and see what he makes of the bigger picture that we were just touching on there with Kate. Good morning, Martin.
Hello, Cassie.
We've got you on a lovely Skype line there. So tell us, you've been looking at this. You haven't got a crystal ball, but you've sure seen a lot of change. What's your outlook?
Well, it's not particularly wonderful at the moment. Look, if you understand how prices are working, it's normally about transaction flow. So once you get good transaction flow, you can get a really good sense of what a fair value of a property is. But as your previous call made the point, transaction volumes are going to fall through the floor very quickly. And that means that the ability to be able to understand what a property is worth is actually going to be very difficult. Now, the other way of doing it is not using market discovery, but effectively figuring about building it up from the price of the land and the price of the property and those sorts of things. Now, if you do that, on average across Australia, properties are still 40% over where they should be. So there is definitely a risk that we're going to see.
Let's just backtrack there. So
Yep.
You're saying that properties are currently overpriced in Australia, just regardless of whatever else is going on in the world.
Yeah. So if you take a long-term view, we have prices which are way over where they should be. That you can all the ratios, the debt ratios, and the relativity of what it takes to put a property on them, together compared with what the market is. So we have this gap, and that's been driven by high debt. It's been driven by, very strong expansion of construction, all those things in the past. So we have a legacy which is highly risky to start with. And now we've got this massive shock coming over the top. And so it's really going to be a question of how quickly the shock passes and how deeply the market is affected. But I'm not very bullish at the moment about outlook. I think prices will fall, and probably will fall quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier with the Tenancy Union of New South Wales, and Leo Patterson-Ross was making the point that this is a chain. We are now seeing how everything is interconnected, and in all kinds of different ways, we are all in it together. We keep going back to that idea. But so what do you think is going to happen with, say, the rental crisis that many people, let's sort of break it down a bit, the rental crisis that many people are going to go into? What will that do? And will we see sort of mass evictions, or not evictions, but empty houses when people just can't afford to pay? I mean, is that one of the scenarios that you're seeing?
Well, certainly one of the things that we're seeing is that many households have cash flow issues before the crisis. So in other words, the money coming in and money going out is pretty difficult. And in fact, those who are renting tend to have a greater set of risks compared with those who are paying mortgage repayments. So mortgage repayments, those with mortgages, around 32% of those have cash flow issues before the crisis. More than half of renters have a cash flow crisis before the crisis. So what that tells me is it is going to be the rental sector that is actually going to be hit very quickly. And quite often, my surveys say households have less than 1 month's savings. So within a month, if they suddenly lose their job, they will have difficulty in paying the rent. And that means that we need to look at some structures to be able to support that directly or indirectly. But you also have to think about the mortgage payments as well, because many people will have difficulty making those mortgage repayments. So this is where those chains that you're talking about really come into play. And of course, everyone's connected with everybody else. And if somebody's mortgage is probably somebody's investment. And so this gets really complicated really quickly. And that's why we need everybody to step up. The banks. I think there's a role for government there, but I think there's also, individuals need to take some responsibility too. And your point from earlier on is dead right. If you've got a good tenant, you want to keep that tenant. You don't want to kick them out just because they can't make the payment for 2 or 3 months. But of course, the issue is we don't know how long this is going to go on for, and that is the unknown.
Someone on our text line says, I have an investment property in Hobart and have an excellent tenant, a single mum and her daughter. A recent inspection report showed they were looking after the property extremely well. Interest rates have dropped, so I've passed it on and given them a 10% discount for 6 months, no questions asked, and assured them that they could negotiate further if their situation worsened. Oh, Mike, that's Mike from Manly. Gee, that's going to be a bit of an outlier, though, I suppose, Martin. That's not going to be a common story.
Well, it is going to be difficult. I think some of the real estate agencies are going to play hardball on this, unfortunately. And, if you are using one of those agencies to run your rental property, it's worth having a conversation with them about what latitude there is. But if somebody stops paying the rent, then that person who was going to receive the rent may not be able to pay the mortgage. So there is this horrible connection to the next person, which is why you have to look at it structurally and systemically and basically say that overall this is going to be a very difficult situation for some time.
Mm-hmm. Now, another aspect of this is Airbnb and those online self-organised rentals that are similar to Airbnb. A lot of those have been struggling. People have bought investment properties hoping to make a bit of money through this system. And now, because tourism is drying up and people are being locked down, will they really suffer? Or, in fact, could they become really valuable because people are going to use them to self-isolate?
Well, certainly the surveys that I run suggest that quite a few people were reliant on Airbnb because they were able to generate significantly stronger revenues, but not across the whole year. So it tended to be around peak times in the summer. And of course, on the South Coast, we had issues there this year. So there may be some who choose to move and go live somewhere else and try and escape that way. But I think net, this is going to be very negative for Airbnb property owners. And some of them will turn around and now try and find somebody who's going to rent for a longer term. And incidentally, that will put downward pressure on rents. One of the things I'm seeing now is people are prepared to take lower rents than previously just to get somebody who's going to be there for the next 6 months or so. So that
is a bright light for people who are renting, and maybe there are some other bright points. You've got a minute left, Martin. People, you say, need to understand their finances better, and this is the time to do it. What's your thumbnail advice?
Yeah, very quickly, draw up a cash flow, see what money is coming in, what money is going out, prioritise, because there are always things that you can give up. But remember, if you've got a mortgage or that sort of, talk to the bank. The banks have hardship schemes. They're willing and able to talk to you. So don't just put your head on the ground and hope it will suddenly magically fix itself. It won't. Start talking to them as well.
Action now. Martin, and we'll talk to you again if it's all right down the track, because this is going to be changing sort of day by day. So we'll do that again if it's all right. Thank you for talking to me today.
Good to talk to you and always happy to chat.
Martin North, Principal of Digital Finance Analytics.